Hi, Dave Roscoe here. It is Monday, November 10th, 2025, and I've got an update on the version 23 protocol update that Pi Network is doing on Testnet 1. And I also have a bunch of user comments that I want to talk about. But first, the metrics. The circulating supply is 8.3 billion Pi, with 5,607 user accounts migrated yesterday, totaling 1 million Pi. Not a lot of migrations, but they seem to be back to doing regular, smaller migrations, but we'll see. We'll take what we can get. There is currently 54.7 million Pi in the Pi migration wallet, and migrations are happening right now. The migrated unlocked rewards are 3.25 billion Pi, with 10.8 million Pi unlocked over the weekend and now free to be traded on the open markets. This article was on the MEXC website, and it says Pi Network prepares for mainnet after Testnet 1 shows high stability. It's not clear here what they're talking about, but you'll find out in just a second. Over 50 million users may soon see Pi Network enter its next phase as Testnet 1 records a near zero transaction failure rate. The network's latest performance suggests a high level of readiness for mainnet launch, with version 23 now in development and new tools being introduced. The Pi ecosystem is preparing to scale blockchain identity verification and computing capabilities at a global level. Now, just to clarify some things here, they're referring to the update to the version 23 of the Stellar Consensus Protocol. And Stellar has already been running this for a while, and Pi Network, as a fork of the Stellar, has declared its intention to update as well. And it's been running on Testnet 1, albeit with a high failure rate. And that has been pointed out by several of the other Pi Network commentators that the rollout was not ready to advance to Testnet 2. Now that appears to no longer be the case, so we may actually see the movement to Testnet 2 quite soon. Pi Network's Testnet 1 has reached an important milestone. According to recent technical reports, the test phase processed large volumes of transactions with almost no failures. I find it funny. You see these people posting these false hype videos or images on X and other social media outlets, but they fail to realize that they're showing test Pi. Test Pi only exists on Testnet, so if you're trying to pawn off your news as being relevant to mainnet, it's quite easy to tell that that's not the case. But I think it's funny. That's kind of like scammers who just like use bad spelling and bad grammar to kind of give themselves away. I swear, if scammers ever learned to spell and use proper grammar, we'd have a lot more victims out there. The data was shared by Pi Network DEX on X, formerly Twitter, confirming that at what point do we stop having to say formerly Twitter? I don't say that anymore. I just call it X. If you don't know what's going on, that's your problem. Confirming that most transactions either completed successfully or failed only once. This result indicates the stability of the test environment. It also shows that the core blockchain system can handle high traffic under real conditions. Now, that's an important statement, and I'll tell you why. Even with the current version of the protocol, 19.6, there are occasional failures, and that's to be expected. Now, we don't want to see a high number of them or a high number of consecutive failures, but I can tell you right now, failures are not that uncommon, and usually you try again and it goes through. Although I have seen occasions where it'll report a failure, but it actually was successful. So then resubmitting that transaction will cause you to execute it twice. And if that transaction is the transfer of Pi from one location to another, you could end up doing it twice and may not be able to get it back. And that's one thing that, in my opinion, is a big red flag. Because I've run into this myself. It hasn't hurt me, but I have noticed that reported failures were actually successes. And if I wasn't paying attention, it could have been a little bit of trouble. This testing phase was designed to simulate real-world use. Developers wanted to ensure the system could manage transactions without major issues. Based on performance metrics, version 23 of the network performed smoothly under pressure. As a result, Pi Network is now preparing to move to the next stage of its development cycle. Testnet 2 is expected to follow with a focus on stress testing the system further. It will help Pi developers introduce and refine new features before launching mainnet. Lessons from the first test phase will be applied to improve system reliability and user experience during the full deployment. Following the successful test phase, Pi Network is now planning the release of mainnet version 23. The development team has confirmed that the stable mainnet version will launch soon, although no exact dates has been announced. Now, this is kind of funny. All up above, they're talking about the progress of version 23, but here it's almost like they're introducing it. I think this maybe would have served better at the top of the article than putting it right here. So I'm not going to read the rest of that. And then the rest of this is stuff we already know, like the recent fast track for KYC new users, AI and decentralized computing, which was that recent OpenMind announcement. And yeah, and that's it. So, but the important thing was that we're getting close on version 23 upgrade to moving to Testnet 2, which is one step closer to mainnet. I still don't think that we're going to see version 23 on mainnet before the end of the year. Probably first quarter 2026 would be my guess, realistically. So looking at some user comments, this user asks, "Hi Dave, please explain what's open mainnet and enclosed mainnet and where are we now?" And this is a very simple, straightforward question with a tricky answer. Depending who you talk to, there are two distinct phases for open mainnet. One is open network, which is the phase that we're in right now, which some argue is not open mainnet. And then there are others who say that it is open mainnet because we're able to trade on the exchanges and we have partnerships actually doing business on the blockchain. And that is the definition of open mainnet. But others are tying the idea of open mainnet to the rollout of decentralized nodes. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you. The one thing I will say that's in their favor is that if you look at the roadmap that was on the Pi Network website, I'm not sure if it's there anymore. I don't want to take time to look it up, but it did not say that they had achieved open mainnet. That particular step in their evolution had remained unchecked. And this is months after open network. So that seems to suggest either they're lazy and haven't updated their website, or internally they're making a distinction between open network and open mainnet. So the answer is, it depends who you ask. If you ask me, I'm on the fence. I tend to think that we are in open mainnet and open network is just a meaningless distinction. Others will say that we are an open network and open mainnet is still yet to happen. The jury's still out, and we'll just have to see how it goes and which viewpoint is the correct one. So I'm sorry I can't answer your question definitively, and I get the confusion because it is very much real. Thanks for the question. This user asks, "Hi Dave, can you elaborate in one of your next videos about the utility in the ecosystem in general at this stage?" And then he goes on to quote, put in parentheses, 25,000 plus apps, and about global Pi market in particular. I'm dailing this because this is the only way to create real value. Thanks. Okay. So the first fallacy here is your assumption that this is the only way to create value. It's not. In fact, it's a poor way to create value. You can throw a lot of something out there and claim that that's value. But if a lot of that something is junk, then you don't really have anything real. And I hate to say this, but those 25,000 plus apps are junk. And I can say that because 99% of them fall into that category. The fact that there might be 1% in there that is decent, great. Will anybody really know about them? Probably not. So what value is that bringing other than, giving you a talking point to say, hey, look at all these apps. They literally invented or added a feature that lets you create an app at the blink of an eye. So yeah, it makes sense that the number of apps have ballooned, but that doesn't mean any of them are any good. Now, Global Pi Market is a decent representation of what the Pi ecosystem claims to want to be. But I'm going to go on a limb here and say that all of this is just noise. Yes, we want the community engagement and we want people making apps. We want people creating businesses. But to be honest with you, the types of things that exist right now are rather amateurish and lacking in the types of features that you would see on, say, like an Amazon or, some other, shopping platform. Now, I'm not making any disparaging remarks about the Global Pi Market, but you have to admit that the Global Pi Market is nowhere near as polished as what exists today on the Web 2 ecosystem. And I don't think that's a thing to be worried about. The fact that it exists now is great and people can use it. And it's giving people some value, especially people in developing countries or who don't have access to other means of online commerce, especially when their only means of currency is the Pi coin. So kudos to Global Pi Market. I just don't think that this is really a cog in the wheel of what the Pi network is referring to when they say utility. The first hint we got of real utility was the sign meeting with the Pi Core team. The fact that they're involved with the Sign Foundation says that they're thinking much, much bigger than these little apps and applications like the Global Pi Market. They're looking at strategic partnerships with governments. We're talking people who make decisions on financial trajectories for entire countries, and not just the country, the world. Pi Network wants to be involved in the movement of currency around the globe. Okay, that kind of utility is what they're talking about. And things like these apps, they're just toys. To be honest with you, I think the fact that they kind of push these is to throw a little carrot to the community and distract the community at large to some of the more subtle moves that they're making. Because if it was clear what they were doing and the scale at which they're moving their pieces, it might scare some people and they may proactively try to stop them. Right? The reason why they're not saying anything is because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. They need to be able to do what they're doing, even under the cloud of being called a scam or a pall of distrust. That's okay with them because that means people aren't really taking them seriously and people aren't really watching what they're doing. But if you watch carefully, they are making some big strategic moves. And at some point, it's going to all come together. And we're talking about utility of things like integrating with Chase Bank or some global banks or with, for example, even like the idea of universal basic income, which is looking more and more like it's going to be a thing with the recent developments with AI. I mean, look at Amazon just announced 14,000 layoffs, and a document leaked talking about how they were going to avoid 160,000 more in new hires, and this is all due to AI, and other companies are following their lead. Let's face it, AI is starting to take people's jobs. and take my job, for example. I'm a senior software engineer. My job is somewhat safe, at least for now, but bringing in new developers fresh out of college, that's not happening. We're actually being encouraged to use AI tools to help us develop more code more quickly and more reliably. So they're already looking to squeeze more work out of the people they have with the experience using AI tools. So there's a reason why the Pi Network's doing what they're doing. And I understand this question, but this is not the type of utility that you should be looking at. Look bigger. Forget about these apps. These apps aren't going to become important until later. Forget about these apps. Look at what they're doing in the global scheme, and the relationships they're trying to build. So, I'm sorry, I can't really answer your question because you're not asking the right question. When you say utility, it has to be in the proper context, and this isn't it. I honestly don't think this is the kind of utility. This is the kind of utility that like makes the masses happy, or doesn't. We've seen both sides of that, but this is not the game that the Pi Network's actually playing right now. Thanks for the question. And finally, we got a big one here. Hi, Dave. Love the show. Why, thank you. The 100 million app downloads is old news, to be honest. Now, this is referring to a recent show I did where it was announced, I forget where, that they had achieved 100 million app downloads from the Google Store. Apparently, that was old news, dating back to March. I don't know. I'll take your word for it. But if sometimes these old stories get pushed out again as new, and I don't always recognize that that's the case. But that's not really what he's talking about here. Either way, it's huge. Yes, it is huge. 100 million downloads, nothing to sneeze at. Half, I'd say, don't use it. Probably so. Is there any chance of you doing your wizardry and finding out how many people actually mine daily? I know the base rate went up this month, but it was $0.0047 in February. A huge lot came back when we went live. So given that, it stalled a bit in recent months, but the term engagement is a bit ambiguous. It is. It's actually not, right? Engagement is literally people who act in some way interact with the app, whether that be mining or just interacting with the ecosystem in the Pi browser, fireside chat, even if you're not mining. Now, I don't think you can get to the Pi browser without first mining because it locks you out. So I think engagement at the very least means mining, but it doesn't necessarily have to. Like for example, no, even on the Pi desktop app, right? If you're not actively mining, it makes you refresh and it doesn't give you your screen until. So yeah, at the very minimum, you have to be mining. So when they say engagement, I think they're talking at the very least mining. Now, what those numbers are, there's nothing that tells you that, unfortunately. I can try to dig up some info on that, but I can tell you right now, it's going to be a large fudge factor if I can get somebody with a little bit of inside knowledge to actually give me a hint. I have gotten a bit of inside knowledge about the number of migrations that have happened so far. So maybe I'll get lucky and I can get some idea of how many people are mining on a somewhat regular basis. So you can hold me to that. Follow up if you think about it, and I'll see what I can do. And if anybody here is listening, hint, that has an in to somebody who might know with the Pi Core team, reach out to me and let's see if we can get some more info. Look at the apps. Some show number of people who have viewed items such as GPM. Some products are only in their hundreds of views. I really think vast majority of pioneers are headless chickens, just tapping, knowing nothing about what Pi actually is. Well, we know that's the case, right? Because look at all that's happening to these poor people out in the wild with exchanges and scams and all of that. Now that we're in open network or open mainnet, going back to the previous question, people are completely unprepared for the crypto world and they don't really know what they're doing. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. And we know this. This is public knowledge. I've tried to educate my referrals on it. Lord God, it's like pulling teeth. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Because they got into Pi because they didn't want to know. And the way the Pi marketed the app is that you don't have to know. And to be honest, you don't. Nobody is twisting anybody's arm right now to have anything to do with the exchanges. And if you didn't get your wallet compromised, then your Pi is sitting pretty in your wallet, just waiting for a use. And you're perfectly safe. There's nothing to worry about. Forget about the markets. You don't have to know that. The ecosystem will eventually come around and you'll have something to do within the confines of the safe and comfy ecosystem, which is anything but safe and comfy because most of the scammers are sending you down that path from links within the ecosystem. So even that's a lie. I don't know what to say. They think they are mining Bitcoin. Yeah, they do. They see the success of Bitcoin and all the people who got in for dirt cheap or nothing, who are mining this for free, and they don't want to miss the boat again. And they need this to be the next Bitcoin. But what they don't understand is that even Bitcoin was not meant to be Bitcoin. The fact that it's what it is now was a complete failure on the part of the mission statement for Bitcoin. It just so happens that because it was the first, it became something else that was wildly successful in the fact that it became a store of value. It's almost like digital gold. Not quite there yet, but it's getting there. And I think at some point it will be. But I think that ship has sailed. There's not going to be another one like that. The Pi coin will not become a store of value. It just won't. It's either going to become the utility token that the Pi network envisions, or it's going to be a complete and utter failure. I don't see any two ways about it. But if you're mining the Pi coin thinking it's going to be another Bitcoin, it's not. It really isn't. I've tried and cried. LOL, look forward to hearing your response. Keep it up. You keep me sane on the bad days. Well, what they say, doctor, heal thyself, right? I'm glad I can keep somebody sane because I'm not doing a great job keeping myself sane. Thanks for the comment. Well, that's all I've got for today. It's been a lot of me going blah, 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 answering questions, but I think that's meaningful. I think, to be honest with you, I like responding to user comments. I mean, I get a lot of comments saying, Dave, thanks so much. Dave, you're great. Dave, Pi to the moon, blah, blah, blah. And those are great comments. Absolutely. Keep them coming. But I can't really comment on that because there's nothing to really engage with. So I love every comment that I get. But if you have a question or you want something that, we can talk about, I'm not going to guarantee that I'll pick your comment, but if it catches me the right way on the right day, even stuff that I don't comment on right away, I'll save for another day and go back to it. But I always appreciate comments that make me think, or that I think that by engaging in addressing them, it'll help others. So keep those comments coming. Not only does it help the YouTube algorithm put this video or put my videos in front of more people, it allows me to provide more meaningful information in the time that I'm spending doing these videos, rather than just spouting out a bunch of numbers or nonsense from the rumor mill or things like that. I think this has value, and I hope you think so too. If anything breaks, I'll be sure to let you know. But until then, don't panic, stay the course, and remember, the success of the Pi network begins with you. Pi to the moon. Peace.